We were talking about lawyers that were going to end up driving taxis. No one ever mentioned that doctors would end up driving taxis, but I think maybe the people entering medicine nowadays would be justified if they felt that at the end of their road they would end up being taxi drivers.
I think all I'm looking for is security at this stage. I'm not bothered what sort of a job I get as long as I've got one.
Well, basically, when I first got into medicine, I thought, fantastic. I've got a career, a guaranteed career ahead of me. I've got a guaranteed, at least adequate, if not more than adequate income. I thought I'll never have to worry about being unemployed. And 2 years out of the university, I found myself in December with no job in front of me for the following year.
There is no doubt at all that those days are gone when doctors could just enter a lucrative career without any worries, choosing the sort of discipline that they might want. Medical incomes are falling, and they're falling quite substantially. The sort of decisions which the young graduates in medicine and medical students are now considering is not so much what they would like to do, but what they can do.
Once upon a time, the medical schools of Australia provided a chosen few with a passport to security, status and financial reward. But on the campus of today, no such promise exists. And the question being asked is, are the hallowed halls of university medical schools an assembly line for the dole queue?
First of all, it is not true to say that there are doctors unemployed. Of course, there may be one or two doctors who claim that they cannot find the work to do that they would most want to do. But there's no doubt that there has been a change in the employment position. Some years ago, say 10 or 15 years ago, when medical services were expanding very rapidly in this country and there was a clear undersupply of doctors, it was very easy for any graduate to get into the career stream of his choice. With the passage of the years, that imbalance between supply and market has gone, and now the students would expect, and certainly it is a fact, that they will have to compete and to work hard if they want to get into the area of medicine which most appeals to them.
But Australia's medical schools produce 1,400 new doctors every year, and within the profession there's a growing view that this is too many.
Various expert authorities have attempted to estimate the ideal sort of number, and it's generally accepted that one doctor for each 650 people is ideal, approximately. In Australia, we are rapidly approaching a situation where we will have one doctor for each 400 people. The AMA, consequently, is calling for a 30% reduction in medical school intake. This is an extremely urgent problem. The figures would suggest that that 30% reduction that we're calling for, if in fact anything, is conservative. And we believe that the authorities must take some responsibility as rapidly as possible.
I don't know the basis on which the AMA arrives at their figure. I should perhaps preface any remarks I make there by saying that as recently as 1972 and 1973, the AMA wrote to all medical schools, at least in this state, insisting that there should be an immediate increase in medical graduates. Had we taken notice of that request, doubtless their request for a decrease would now be for an even larger one.
I remember when I began as a medical student, I was very idealistic. I hope I still am, but I think you get a bit hardened as time goes by. I think when you start, yes, people are idealistic. They want to help humanity. They're also looking for a secure job. They want a challenging job. Many people are highly intelligent who enter medicine, and medicine seems to offer all those things, or it certainly did when I started medicine: security, challenge, and also the rewards of helping sick people.
Joe McGurr is one of the young doctors in the firing line. The prognosis for his future security and status is now not as certain as it was when he began his studies.
Big breath for me, Peter. I'm a second-year resident medical officer, and it's taken me 7 years to reach this point in my career. That means I've taken 7 years to reach the point where I can now think about doing further study to become a doctor in a specialty or a doctor in general practice.
So how long does it take before you become settled and established in a career?
I think that I could become settled in general practice, which would be the shortest period of time. In about 3 years, I would move out and become a general practitioner.
Peter Craig is a suburban GP. General practice is the area of medicine most severely hit by the oversupply of doctors. You can rest assured that Dr. Craig's other car isn't a Rolls-Royce. In Peter Craig's area, there are 45 GPs, all competing for business.
It's a great public relations exercise, essentially. People come to the doctor that they like. So you have to present yourself well, and you have to essentially provide a better service than the next person. So that means that I have to do my own after-hours service, my own home visits, and that, you know, for instance, I couldn't charge what the AMA suggests one should charge. I bulk bill a lot of patients, and I charge a very reasonable fee. Basically, I charge a scheduled fee for all services. Let me feel your pulse.
Peter Craig practices medicine in the image of the idealistic doctor who encourages us to feel safe, secure and cared for. It's an image we don't like tarnished, but Peter Craig may be an endangered species. Although you could label Peter Craig as being idealistic, you couldn't accuse him of being the profession's most avaricious businessman. Last year, his gross income was $26,400. After running expenses, he was left with a taxable income of only $10,040. Consequently, Dr. Diana Cooper, his wife, works to raise extra money.
I'm only working a couple of days a week, and that supplements Peter's income, because while he's starting off, he's not at the moment. He's been going for 1 year now, and he doesn't look like he's going to be making a living for at least another 3 or 4 years. So I need to make some money to supplement that income to a certain degree.
Peter Craig's father, who's a dentist, also supplements their income. This is family medicine with a twist. His mother is unpaid receptionist and also minds the baby. The question is, why bother?
We encouraged our children to go to university and, if possible, to become self-employed, because we felt that it was very important as an individual to be able to run your own race and to serve the community in your own way.
One of the reasons why I did medicine was that it's a fairly independent profession. I don't like to think of myself as a public servant. For that reason, I resist government intervention in medicine in whatever form.
The desire to be independent and to run your own race is becoming more difficult to achieve, especially in the major cities. The oversupply of doctors is felt most in the capital cities of Australia, yet there's often a shortage of medical skills in the country and a rural community can be poorly serviced. The new pressures are forcing some doctors to reassess their situation. Kathy Shannon is one who's chosen to abandon the big city. She's redeployed herself and family, lock, stock, barrel, husband and 3 children, from Sydney to Canberra. Not only that, but she's given up her struggle for independence in exchange for the security of a salaried job with the army.
From Sydney, every week it was a worry as to whether you could pay the secretary or pay the rent and, you know, what were we going to eat on for the next week, and silly things like that. It was a life of total insecurity and planning ahead for a few months of where am I going to get another spare job to find the extra money. And after living for 2.5, 3 years on that sort of insecurity and not being able to sleep at night, it's very relaxing to come down here, work in a government job where I have people to do all the paperwork and all the little details which take up 90% of your time in general practice.
People might think, though, that they've been insecure for years, and what's different about doctors? I mean, why can't they be insecure for change?
Well, I suppose it depends if you want people making crucial decisions about your life and health, also worrying about how they're going to pay the rent. This is the trouble about having a responsible job. I mean, this is why you pay people in professions and managerial situations a reasonable salary so they can actually concentrate on their decision making. It's very wearing to make decisions about people day after day and, you know, person after person walking in with a different set of problems, and you have to make a decision about it. And it's very hard to do that and also worry about your rent at the same time.
Peter Jacobs is a GP in a suburban group practice. He's got his problems too. This isn't his idea of heaven, but his career options have narrowed. So what went wrong?
When I first got out of the university, I did my early training, postgraduate training at Sydney Hospital, which suffered major cutbacks in 1979. Beds were cut back, training positions were cut back, and it was just at the critical point when I was about to enter into surgical training, and the job which I was hoping to enter was eliminated, so that I then found myself outside of the training system and had to try and find my way back in, and spent the next 4 years trying to do that.
Do you like being a general practitioner?
I am enjoying general practice. I'm enjoying it more than I anticipated I would, though I still feel a desire to get my hands into a bit of active surgery, and that's something that's being frustrated at the moment.
Only the brightest and the best are allowed to become the nation's doctors. They're chosen from the top 5% of high school students. For years, the decision to enter medicine was made on the basis of a secure and prestigious career with opportunities. Today, the oversupply of doctors isn't only causing career opportunities to narrow, it's also causing incomes to drop quite dramatically.
I'm now 8.5 years out of university. I have a wife and 2 children, and at the moment my gross for the year is going to be under $40,000.
So how much do you come out net?
Somewhere around the high 20s or maybe $30,000 if I'm lucky.
Peter Jacobs isn't alone. A recent survey conducted by the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners revealed the taxable income of 1/3 of GPs in Australia was under $30,000. And many GPs feel they're falling behind.
Right. If you ask a plumber or a television repairman to come to your home on a weekend, then they will charge you $30, maybe $40 before they even walk in the door, maybe even more. And then there's an hourly fee for how much they will charge you for the work that you do. And for a general practitioner, a man who's been through 5 or 6 years of university training, many years of experience after that, the after-hours home visit fee at the moment is $30. And if the patient is underprivileged, is being bulk billed, the government will give you back approximately $28. And that's something that really sticks in my craw, because it just seems totally unjust to me that people like plumbers and electricians should earn that much less, should earn that much more rather than a doctor can. I mean, it reminds me of a joke which has been modified of late, where a doctor calls a plumber over to his home on a weekend because of a dripping tap, and the plumber walks in and fixes the tap and hands over the account, and the doctor says to the plumber, "This is ridiculous, I'm not allowed to charge my patients that much when I visit them." And the plumber replied, "Neither was I when I was a doctor." And I think that's got, that is what it's all about at the moment.
So doctors are worth more than plumbers?
I think so. And I think if you ask the general member of the public, they'd say, sure, doctors are worth more than plumbers.
I think general practitioners do find it difficult to make a reasonable living these days because of the increased competition occurring in the marketplace, not only from other general practitioners, but also from alternative medicine practitioners and in fact, from specialists as well. And I think the reason that this has occurred is that they've been slow to increase the services available to their patients. And I think the major constraint on that has been the structure and nature of the medical benefits system that we work under. Specifically, the medical benefits system at the moment does not reward some of the services that the patients want, such as preventative medicine, of lifestyle intervention for a healthy lifestyle, and some areas of counselling.
This is where the main part of...
Today, doctors are losing business to alternative practitioners. Dorothy Hall specialises in iridology, and for 30 years she's practised the preventive techniques of the naturopath. Alternative medical therapies have been steadily increasing in popularity and are now an important component of healthcare for an ever-growing proportion of the population.
The patient types have changed over the years. We used to get only the long skirts and long hair, the dropout people. Now we've got Mr. and Mrs. Everybody coming to naturopaths. Ordinary people, people who maybe 5 or 10 years ago would never dream of going to a herbalist or a naturopath, now feel much more comfortable with the whole idea. The establishment attitude towards us, of course, still is that we are a lot of crooks and charlatans.
A number of medical practitioners are being forced into diversification of therapies away from mainstream medicine, some fairly fringe therapies, in fact, that have questionable scientific value. I don't believe that these changes are, in fact, going to improve the health of the community at all.
Doctors are looking at what can they offer the public, what increased role they can have, perhaps as health teachers, as counsellors, as someone who takes more of the family and more of the person into their care and not just one level of themselves.
Right there?
Yes.
The economics of medical oversupply are changing what's acceptable for the medical profession. Dr. Nick Basil specialises in various forms of remedial massage. 7 years ago, when he started his practice, he was one of the adventurous few.
How's that?
Yes, that's a sore spot. Just there.
Today, he's part of a trend. The general practitioner of the future will have an enhanced role as personal counsellor and concentrate more than in the past on preventive medicine.
Right, use my elbow.
Not everybody, for example, is suited to having an antibiotic script or a painkiller script. Now, if that's all that you can do, then that limits your degree of effectiveness. So on that level of greater flexibility and greater range of therapeutic options, they should get into it.
But a cynic might say that general practitioners are going into acupressure, acupuncture and massage in order to get more patients and consequently more money.
That would be true if you get more money. But actually what happens is there's a trade-off between money and satisfaction. If, for example, I saw 5 patients in the half hour that I would spend with someone, which is about the average, my income would double if I saw those 5 people. So by seeing one person, the scheduled fee is about less than half what it would be if I stuck to the standard consultation sort of time span. So it's the satisfaction that I'm now getting, which I wasn't getting before, which offsets the loss of potential income.
A world apart from Nick Basil's philosophy is the trend towards the commercialisation of medicine that's arisen with the concept of the doctor as entrepreneur. Dr. Geoffrey Edelston has been opening new medical centres as fast as possible and expects to corner 20% of Sydney's medical market. The oversupply of doctors has produced the manpower to staff these centres. This so-called supermarket medicine is the most controversial aspect of new directions in medical care. Many see the pursuit of profit as a threat to the quality of patient care. Undaunted by the bad press, Dr. Sergei Alexeyev has formed a public company to finance a group of new medical centres in Melbourne, with an obvious tendency towards the privatisation of healthcare.
We're looking at buying up a big public hospital soon, setting up it as a centre of excellence, perhaps even a private medical school. America certainly has many, we don't have any. But the situation is for private enterprise gearing itself as to what the community needs. private medicine is more important than government-funded medicine. And that is a challenge that I'll be throwing up to the government in a way, that consider us as a privately run enterprise. So that, all right, you can skin a cat in many ways, and sure, you can rip off Medicare, and that's the basic worry of the government as to what I'm going to do with the law as Medicare shows it. And I can, I'm sure, within the law, get a lot of money very quickly through Medicare. I'm not prepared to do that. I feel that by providing a 24-hour service and by using the facility as it's available and by, may I say honestly, addressing the situation, one can also generate goodwill and funds in the long term rather than the short term.
I think that most people would regard purchasing medical care as different from purchasing, say, a can of cat food and going to the cheapest supermarket, as opposed to the sort of service which an individual doctor who looks after a family, who knows their background over a period of some years can provide. And I'm confident that the Australian public will recognise that difference and act accordingly.
If one's producing a service that is based on quality and excellence and is based on true concern for whatever that patient's bringing to the doctor, there's no need to then count pennies at all, because goodwill will look after that. The patient goodwill, the community goodwill, the patient going home and saying, look, that doctor spoke Vietnamese to me because he tried to learn it, knowing that there are Vietnamese people in my area. It's terrific, you know, he actually said a sentence and patted my kid on the head. That's the sort of situation which will breed income.
I think there's two problems with shopfront medicine, with the commercial development of medical practices, particularly some of the larger groups following the American pattern. One is that the method of structure of these is designed to maximise income for commercial reasons. And this is particularly evident in the United States, where a large number of clinics of this type have been taken over by purely commercial interests rather than by medical practitioners. And in these cases, two things I think occur. One is that they're run like any other business with a profit motive. And secondly, that the responsibility of the doctors employed in those systems is to their employer primarily rather than to their patient.
The bad image does worry me in that I'm being identified with it. I have been already quoted in a number of media situations as being another Edelston or being another entrepreneur in the 24-hour supermarket medicine. And as our answer to those criticism in my last call letter to the editor of The Age is, it's not supermarket medicine that I'm producing, it's the super service medicine that I'm about. And that's the difference.
Whether Sergei Alexeyev can combine personalised healthcare within the context of big business remains to be seen. In the meantime, the oversupply of doctors is forcing medicine to reassess itself. Whether this is a crisis or a challenge depends on your point of view.
Once upon a time, a GP would work by himself. He'd provide a 24-hour service, 7 days a week. But in return for that, he would be respected by his patients. He would have an established, stable population with whom he was working. And his income, I think, would have been suitable compensation for the sort of hours and effort that were put in. And unfortunately, those days have changed.
The prestige and status are decreasing a little bit as there are more and more doctors coming into the marketplace. But I hope that the other things don't change. The doctors will remain committed to their patients and willing to deal with people in suffering, and will continue to study. But I worry a little bit sometimes that if we're going to lose the status and prestige of being a doctor, that the commitment will also go.
I wanted to do a job that I would find satisfying, and I saw so many jobs as essentially exploiting people. So I find a great deal of satisfaction in medicine. I think the financial rewards are not highly attractive, but there are so many other rewards in medicine.
I feel that the old-style GP is part of the training of the past. It is also a very important part of the relationship between patient and doctor. In other words, the one man, one doctor, one patient relationship is terribly important and must be maintained, even if there's a corporation involved.
What upsets me probably is the public perception that things are easy in medicine. I don't mind having to be relocated. I don't mind having to get out there and look for a job just like anybody else does. What I object to is to be told by the media, the government and anybody else who has an opinion on the subject that I'm wealthy and have got things easy.
$99, $99, $99, $99, $99.
Out of every 100 babies born in the Western world, one will die.
Many complex and uncomfortable feelings arise following the death of a baby.
I think it's so important to acknowledge that a stillborn baby is as much a baby in whom you have invested love and hopes and expectations than any other baby.
Some babies die. Encounters, 10 o'clock Thursday night on ABC.